What is WCAG and what does it mean to be WCAG compliant? If you are new to accessibility, you have probably heard of the acronym WCAG before, but what does it mean? Let's first talk about what the WCAG is, and if you stick around, I will explain how you can be compliant with this requirement. WCAG is short for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which are an internationally recognized standard for web accessibility. They were first published in May of 1999 by the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. The W3C was founded by Tim Berners-Lee, the so-called father of the internet, and is responsible for creating the international standards for the World Wide Web. The current version of the WCAG is 2.2 and it was published in October of 2023 after many delays. However, it is now the international standard and should be the target of any web accessibility work that is being done. The WCAG can be divided into 4 sections, and these sections are often called the POUR principles, which stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Perceivable means that the content can be perceived by the senses. Typically, we assume that the main sense that people use is sight, but some users depend on sound and hearing, while others may only be able to use touch to experience a website. In other words, we want to create an experience that can be perceived by the senses, meaning interfaces and information are presented in a way that all users can perceive. Operable means that the user interface and components must be operable or usable to different input devices. You may assume that everyone uses a mouse or scrolls through web content with the flick of their fingers, but this isn't always true. Some users may not be able to use a mouse and will instead be dependent on the keyboard. Others will not be able to flick through the content and will require a screen reader to read out what is visually presented to them. Understandable means that users can understand the content that is being presented to them. A lot of times this means not surprising the user with changes to the layout and being consistent with the presentation and the navigation. But it also means making sure that forms are easy to use and understand. Users shouldn't have to guess what errors they made. Instead, they should be told what is wrong and how they can fix it. Robust means that the content can be interpreted by a wide range of user agents and assistive technology. Put another way, if someone is using a screen reader, will the screen reader be able to make sense of the content that is being presented to it? In the long view, we also want to make sure that we are coding our web products correctly today so that they will continue to work in the future as the technology changes. Now that we understand the POUR principles, let's dive a little deeper into what the WCAG standards are and what it means to be WCAG compliant. The 4 POUR principles are further divided into 13 guidelines. Under perceivable, we have text alternatives, time-based media, adaptable, and distinguishable. Text alternatives gives us guidance on how to deal with visual content and provide alternatives for non-text content. Time-based media gives us guidance on how to deal with audio and video so that users who can't see or hear have a different way of consuming the content. This often means creating captions and or transcripts. Adaptable provides guidance on how to create content that can be presented in different ways, maybe by creating a simpler layout without losing structure and information. Distinguishable means making it easier for users to see and hear content. A big part of this is ensuring that there is sufficient contrast between the background and the foreground. Under operable, we have keyboard accessible, enough time, seizures, navigable, and input modalities. Keyboard accessible means that all functionality is available with the keyboard. If you have buttons that you can click with the mouse, you should also be able to activate those buttons with the keyboard alone. Enough time means giving users sufficient time to read and use the content. We don't want important information to be removed from the screen before our users have time to read it. Seizures means that we don't want to cause users to have a seizure, but it also means avoiding causing other physical reactions to users, including making them dizzy. Navigable means providing ways to help the user to move around the page, navigate the site, and figure out where they are at any given point. Input modalities is the most recent addition to this principle, but it means we are making it easier for users to operate site functionality through various inputs beyond just the keyboard. Under understandable, we have readable, predictable, and input assistance. Readable means that the text is readable and understandable. A lot of times this is about ensuring that we are using the right words, explaining our acronyms, and ensuring that the language for the page is set correctly. Predictable means that the web page will appear and operate in predictable ways. We don't want to surprise our users by changing the navigation on every page or showing content without giving a warning or receiving an explicit request from the user. Input assistance means helping the user avoid and correct mistakes in forms. We don't want to tell the user that there's something wrong with a form norm, but then not give any guidance about how to further resolve the issue. Under robust, there is only one guideline, and it is compatibility, which means we want to maximize compatibility with current and future user agents and assistive technologies. Basically, if we follow the rules today, our code should continue to work in the unknown future. While this is a lot of information, it is important because it will help you understand what the WCAG is and how you can use it to make your website WCAG compliant. Under each of the guidelines, there are success criteria. We will not go into the details, but know that there are 87 of these which provide further guidance on how to meet the requirements. Within the success criteria, there are also techniques and failures which provide even more details about how to meet the requirement or how to pass and fail it. Now that we understand what the WCAG is all about, let's quickly talk about how to be compliant with the WCAG standards. To start, the best approach is going to be to hire an accessibility consultant or someone who previously has experience with web accessibility. This is important because there is so much information that without experience, it will be difficult to make sense of and ensure that the requirements are being met correctly. Ultimately, what a web accessibility specialist will do is check a representative sample of the pages and then go through the WCAG requirements and ensure that each of the requirements is being met sufficiently. Some of the requirements can be tested with automated tools, but at best that will only cover about 30 to 40% of the WCAG requirements. For the rest, we need to do manual testing, which includes testing out all the functionality of the site with a keyboard and then again with a keyboard and the screen reader. As we do this testing, we will look through the WCAG requirements and mark off where a success criteria has been met or where it has failed. After working through all the pages and the WCAG success criteria, then we will have a sense of how compliant our website is. Just keep in mind that it is almost impossible to meet all the WCAG requirements, but if you are working with accessibility in mind, have an accessibility specialist on your team, and are properly testing at every stage of development, you will be on the right track. At the end of the day, being WCAG compliant is about meeting the WCAG requirements as much as possible. And while that is something that will not happen overnight, with a plan and dedication to accessibility best practices, it is certainly possible. Let me know if you have any questions about this topic or any other web accessibility related topics in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you found this helpful, click the like button and subscribe for more content like this.